Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Worthyworthitpriceless. I'm your host, Tammy Simmons. And in this podcast, I want to talk to you about being careful about speaking against things that God has given you. So in 2009, my grandmother taught me how to make pillows. And she taught me how to make pillows at a time where I was depressed. And so although I love making pillows, like that was my thing. Like I was good at designing colors, everything. I enjoyed going to Joann Fabric and getting the, getting fabric and everything and coming up with stuff. But in that same breath, I was also speaking against making pillows. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I talked against it a lot. And it was like because the sales wasn't what I thought they were going to be and things like that. Now you have to, mind you, this was like 2009 and stuff like that. Majority of it was kind of like before social media. And regardless of that, like I am kind of shy, so it's like I really wasn't telling people. So I will take full responsibility of that as well. So anyway, um throughout this whole time, I'm sitting up there, I'm enjoying making pillows, but then I'm speaking against making pillows. I'm like, oh, it just takes too long to make and all of this stuff. And so you feel like you can, imagine all of this is just building up. You know what I mean? So, anyway, fast forward till now. Basically, like a few months ago, I ended up giving away the sewing machine. And now you're probably like, why, if it's something that has blessed you, God called your grandma to help you make pillows, then why did you give away the one thing that you actually needed? And like I said, to answer your question, I've been speaking against making pillows this whole time. So I felt like it wasn't something that I needed anymore. Like I do podcasts, I'm doing, music. So I'm like, I'm gonna focus on music. I'm not gonna worry about making pillows or nothing until recently. Now, if you listen to the last podcast, I told you how I was at Hobby Lobby and God just touched me um, on last Thursday or this past Thursday, which was September 18th, to get back into sewing because I will break it down for you guys even a little bit more. I have been running. I've been trying to find something to fill that space. If I'm being totally transparent, I've been trying to find another craft, especially with Joann Fabric leaving. You're thinking you're doing the right thing. Like, there's no reason for me to continue trying to sew because there's no places that have fabric. And now you can kind of get like where my mindset was and probably the things that I was saying to myself. Like, oh, there's no reason for me to sew anymore. Joann Fabric isn't here. I don't have a place to get fabric from anymore. And so I'm trying all these different things to fill the void of not sewing anymore. As I told you before, like I think I got into no, I got into cooking. I was going to go back to school for cosmetology. And I just got back. I got into, I'm sorry, card stock and making inspirational or encouraging cards and stuff like that. So I've been, trying to busy myself with other things. And it wasn't until recently I was like, I do have a lot of card stock, I'm not going to lie. But I realized it didn't fill the void. It's something different about having fabric versus cards. And I looked over, I was like, man, you know what I mean? And so today, as I was waiting for my daughter to come home, it hit me. And I realized the reason why God allowed me or allowed my grandmother to teach me how to make pillows was because it was a part of my calling. That's why it was something that I just kept going back to. But I was telling myself that I wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? I was speaking against the very thing that God allowed my grandmother to use to help me. And once again, like I said, I gave away the sewing machine. And now I have to figure out a way, or at the time, I had to figure out a way to get the sewing machine back. Now, that same sewing machine was actually $250 now. When I bought it, I think it was $181. And so now I'm like, man, I don't have $250 to buy another sewing machine. I got to get brakes for my car. I have to get, you know what I mean? Like, life is happening. I don't have the money for another sewing machine. But I also prayed to God and I said, God, I am sorry. I am sorry for not appreciating what you gave me. I'm sorry for not seeing that it was a reason for all these things. But I made a promise to him. I said, God, if you give me back the sewing machine, I promise, I will do right by it this time and everything. As soon as I got done praying, God reminded me that years ago, I gave 2 sewing machines to my mom, 2 separate times, I believe. And so after I got done praying and God reminded me that my mom had the sewing machines that I gave her, or she possibly still had them, I reached out to my mom immediately and I asked her, I was like, do you still have the sewing machines that I gave you? And she was like, yeah. You know what I mean? And she looked and she was like, it's some dust or something on them. But, she looked, she was like, yeah, I got them. And I was like, I think my daughter just got home and got situated. And I was like, well, we on our way. We about to come get them. And then lo and behold, she actually gave them to me. And I had some fabric when I went to Joann's, like I just told you in the last podcast, if you listen to it. And when I tell you, I also still had, like, I think I had a spool. I do have like a spool of pink thread. I always have to keep that. But I had a spool of pink thread. I found some bobbins. When I tell you, I used both of the sewing machines and they worked like butter. I was like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. God gave it back. Now, let's even go even further into this. These weren't random sewing machines. The sewing machine, it was a Brother HE240. They actually don't even make this sewing machine anymore. But the thing about it is, that was my first sewing machine. God restored and gave me back what I had from the beginning. The very first thing that I did not even appreciate, God gave it back to me in a different mindset. He gave it back and he restored, or I believe he's restoring the time. He could have gave me back the other sewing machine and all this other stuff, but no, he gave me back the sewing machine that I had from the beginning that I did not appreciate. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do that. He gave me back the sewing machine that's not even, even in production anymore. And that's what God will do. Sometimes when we think that God will restore time, we're thinking he's going to rewind everything. But he gave me back something that I didn't appreciate the first time. And so now the encouragement that I want to give to you, I hope I've been giving it to you this whole time. Be careful about what you speak on what God has given you. That is the very thing that God is using to bless you. I know it may not seem like you're going anywhere, that this is going to, do anything, be fruitful or anything. But realize that God did not send the resources, the people, He didn't send you that idea for it not to flourish in one way or another. Sometimes you might have a season where you're basically like, man, this isn't going anywhere. But enjoy the journey. There's so many things that I learned along the way. I learned about myself. You know what I mean? Sewing got me out of a lot of possibly depressive moments. It made me feel as though I was doing something positive. But because I didn't really see it for that, I looked at it as being a burden instead of a blessing. And that's how I basically gave away something that blessed me, actually. And sometimes we talk about, even in the Bible, I can't remember which one it is because it is very late right now. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning. But um, the one who gave away his birthright for soup. And I used to talk, I'm like, I don't want to be like him and all this. But at the end of the day, now I realize I actually was like him. I gave away a blessing just because I was having an emotional moment and I felt like it wasn't even worth it. But God forgave me and He gave it back to me. Now, prepare to be sick of me, okay? Because I'm going to start sewing, okay? And I'm so happy because I think this week, because like Hobby Lobby does every other week. So this week coming up is their fabric sale. I am going to go crazy, okay? I'm going to go crazy in this store. And I'm going to get almost every bit of fabric that I want. I already have a cart full of stuff that I have to basically replace on some of these sewing machines. But I'm telling you, prepare to be sick of me because I'm going to be sewing up a storm. But either way, I hope this podcast helped you. I hope it blessed you in one way or another. I am about to go to sleep because I'm sleepy. And it is almost 2 o'clock in the morning. It is 1:51 a.m. Well, 1:59 a.m. Oh, no. Now it is 2 a.m. I'm going to sleep. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Until next time, always know that you have worth, you have value. It is not too late for you.